There's a good place in this world for money. Yes, sir, and I know where it is. It's right here in my pocket.
Most people think they know Car Wash. They've heard the song. They know Richard Pryor was in it. Maybe they've seen it late at night on cable and thought, yeah, that was pretty good. But here's what most people don't know. This movie has a backstory so strange, so wild, and so packed with Hollywood secrets that the film itself almost feels like a cover story for what was actually happening behind the scenes. We're talking about a director who would go on to put rubber nipples on the Batsuit, a preacher who looked at the script, saw himself, and ran, a star who was so high during filming that he couldn't remember making the movie at all, a title song scrawled on a bag from a fried chicken restaurant, and a legendary character actor who was cut so completely from the theatrical release that you'd never know he was even there, until the TV version aired and blew everyone's minds. This is Car Wash, 1976, and we're going 28 facts deep. Stay locked in, because the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Fact 1. The screenplay was written by the future director of Batman. Before we get to Richard Pryor, before we get to the disco, we need to talk about the man who put words on the page, Joel Schumacher. That name is about to mean something. In 1976, Schumacher was a hungry young writer trying to make his mark. He'd started as a costume designer, moved into screenwriting, and Car Wash was one of his earliest major credits. He wrote it the same year he penned Sparkle, and a year later, The Wiz, starring Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. Then, 20 years later, Warner Brothers came calling. They needed someone to take over the Batman franchise from Tim Burton. Schumacher said yes. Batman Forever in 1995, Batman and Robin in 1997, so full of ice puns and anatomically detailed rubber suits that George Clooney has spent decades apologizing for it. The same man who wrote Car Wash also gave the world Ice to Meet You. Same writer. Two very different legacies. Let that sit with you. Fact 2. The Daddy Rich role was written for a real reverend. Gold chains, gold Cadillac. Prosperity gospel dripping from every sentence. Daddy Rich is one of the most memorable figures in the film. Larger than life, slick as oil. Richard Pryor played him, but Pryor wasn't the first choice. The character was based on a real person, Reverend Ike, full name, Frederick J. Eicherenkoder II, one of the most famous televangelists of the 1970s. Rolls Royces, custom suits, millions in donations. He preached that God wanted his followers rich and lived like he believed it. Director Michael Schultz wanted the real thing. He got a meeting at Universal Studios, pitched the role, explained the concept. Ike was interested. Then he walked away. Why? Because he was smart enough to see the trap. Playing Daddy Rich meant admitting the prosperity gospel was a hustle, that the gold Cadillac was a costume, that the whole thing was an elaborate joke, and that he was in on it. The mirror was too clear, so the role went to Richard Pryor. Fact 3. Richard Pryor admitted he was high on cocaine the entire shoot. Here's a question for you. Have you ever watched a performance and thought, something's off about this, but I can't put my finger on it? Now ask yourself, what if the performer couldn't put their finger on it either, because they were completely out of their mind the whole time? That's what happened with Richard Pryor on Car Wash. Pryor got top billing. His face was on the poster. His name sold tickets. But his role, Daddy Rich, is barely more than an extended cameo. He's in the film for a handful of scenes. He shot all of them in just 2 days. In his autobiography, Prior Convictions and Other Life Sentences, he was brutally honest about the experience. He said he was too coked out on set to know what was going on. He didn't fully understand what the character was supposed to be doing. The cocaine fog was that thick. He was also frustrated by the marketing. The posters positioned him as the star. Audiences walked in expecting a Richard Pryor showcase. What they got was an ensemble picture where Pryor floats through a few scenes, delivers some preacher shtick, and vanishes. He felt misled, and he wasn't wrong. But here's the part that gets you. The performance still works. 2 days, completely high the entire time. And Daddy Rich is still iconic, still funny, still magnetic. That's either a testament to Pryor's raw talent, or it's proof that some performances operate at a frequency beyond conscious thought. Maybe both. Fact 4. Car Wash was originally supposed to be a Broadway musical. The movie, you know, almost didn't exist as a movie at all. Producers Art Linson and Gary Stromberg wanted to build a full-scale replica car wash on a Broadway stage. Live actors, live music, a theatrical event in the tradition of Jesus Christ, Superstar, and Tommy, both of which started as concept albums before becoming films. The plan: build the stage show first, generate heat, then sell the rights to Hollywood. They pitched it to Ned Tannen at Universal Pictures. Tannen heard the whole thing, then made a counteroffer that changed everything. Skip Broadway. Make the movie now. Universal will finance it. They agreed. The stage version never happened. The film became a cult classic. Sometimes the shortcut is the right path. Fact 5. Norman Whitfield wrote the title. Song on a fried chicken bag. Let's talk about the song, because if you've heard anything about Car Wash, you've heard the song. It's inescapable. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B charts simultaneously. It became one of the defining tracks of the disco era. It is, by any measure, a #1 hit. And it was written on a paper bag from a fried chicken restaurant. Norman Whitfield was a Motown legend. The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Gladys Knight. He knew how to craft a hit record. But when director Michael Schultz approached him about scoring Car Wash, Whitfield wasn't interested. He didn't want the project. The money changed his mind. So did the opportunity to launch a new funk band he'd just signed to his own label, a group called Royce. But once he agreed, he hit a wall. He had the assignment. He had the band. He couldn't crack the title track. Then he was watching a basketball game. Something clicked. He reached for the nearest writable surface he could find, a paper bag from a fried chicken spot, and scribbled out the first draft right there. The hook, the verses, the whole structure, grease stains and all. That fried chicken bag became a Grammy winner. Think about that the next time inspiration feels inconvenient. Fact 6. The entire soundtrack was recorded before filming began. Most films work in sequence. You write the script, you shoot the film, you add music in post-production. The music serves the image. Car Wash did it completely backwards, and it produced something extraordinary. When Whitfield signed on, production was still in early stages. He attended 2 weeks of rehearsals. He watched the actors work through scenes. He absorbed the energy, the rhythm, the vibe of what this movie was trying to be. Then he went back to Beverly Hills, sequestered Royce, and recorded the entire soundtrack before a single camera rolled. 19 songs, a full double album's worth of material. Then, and this is the part that makes this genuinely unusual, director Michael Schultz played the finished soundtrack on set during filming. The actors weren't performing to silence. They weren't moving to placeholder temp tracks. They were hearing the real Royce recordings while they worked. The energy you see on screen is the energy of people genuinely reacting to that music in real time. The soundtrack didn't accompany the film. The film was performed to the soundtrack. That's a production philosophy you almost never see, and it explains why the two feel so inseparable when you experience them together. Fact 7. Car Wash competed at Cannes against Martin Scorsese. Take a moment. Think about what Car Wash is. Low budget, ensemble cast. No prestige agenda, no Oscar bait, just a funky comedy about working-class people getting through a day at a Los Angeles car wash. Now ask yourself, what's the last film like that you'd expect to see at the Cannes Film Festival? In 1977, Car Wash screened in Cannes. Not in a sidebar, not at midnight, not in some supplementary category. In the main competition. The year before, Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver had taken home the Palme d'Or. Car Wash competed on the same stage that Taxi Driver had just won. It took home the technical grand prize and the Best Music Award for Norman Whitfield. It received a Palme d'Or nomination, and then the Grammy, Best Album of Original Score written for a motion picture or television special. The title track also earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Original Song. A disco comedy about minimum wage workers. Cannes, Grammy, Golden Globe nomination. Nobody saw that coming. And it still feels surreal when you say it out loud. Fact 8. Every single line of dialogue was dubbed in post-production. Car Wash was shot on location at a real car wash, the Figueroa Car Wash on the corner of Rampart Boulevard and 6th Street in Los Angeles. That decision gave the film its authenticity, real equipment, real setting, real texture. It also created an enormous problem. Car wash machinery is loud. Rollers, sprayers, dryers, buffers, all of it running constantly throughout production. The sound crew quickly discovered that every single take was unusable from an audio standpoint. The performances were there. The dialogue was completely drowned out. The filmmakers made a decision. They would re-record everything in post-production. Every actor, every scene, every line. This process, automated dialogue, replacement or ADR, is common in filmmaking, but most productions use it selectively. A line here, a fix there. Car Wash used it for the entire movie. And since they were rebuilding the audio track from scratch anyway, they did something clever. They created a second, clean version for television broadcast. Every instance of the N-word was replaced with the word brother. Same performances, same lip movements, different words. One shoot, two finished products. The TV edit wasn't an afterthought. It was engineered from the beginning. Fact 9. Bill Duke made his film debut, here before becoming an action icon. 6'4", shaved head. A presence so intense it could lower the temperature of a room just by entering it. You know Bill Duke from Predator, where he fired a minigun alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know him from Commando, from Menace to Society, where he delivered one of the most quoted lines of 1990s cinema. But before all of that, Bill Duke was washing cars. Car Wash was his first film role. He played Abdullah Muhammad Akbar, formerly known as Dwayne, a black Muslim revolutionary who clashes with his co-workers, dismisses Daddy Rich's prosperity gospel as a straight-up hustle, and carries the movie's sharpest political edge. The role fit Duke the way a second skin fits. That intensity wasn't manufactured. That was him. After Car Wash, the career exploded. Commando in 1985, Predator in 1987, Action Jackson in 1988, and then Behind the Camera, A Rage in Harlem, which premiered at Cannes. Deep Cover with Lawrence Fishburne, Sister Act 2 with Whoopi Goldberg. The man they now call the godfather of African-American cinema started at a car wash on Rampart Boulevard. Everyone has to start somewhere. Fact 10. Ivan Dixon came out of acting retirement for this movie. By 1976, Ivan Dixon had made a decision. He was done acting. You might know him from Hogan's Heroes, where he'd played Sergeant Kinchlow from 1965 to 1970. He walked away from that role, walked away from performing, and moved behind the camera. He directed The Spook Who Sat by the Door in 1973, a genuinely radical film. He was helming episodes of The Waltons and The Rockford Files. He was building a directing career. Then Michael Schultz called. Dixon had starred in Nothing But a Man, one of the most important independent black films of the 1960s. Schultz rewrote portions of the Car Wash script specifically to amplify the relationship between Dixon's character Lonnie, an ex-convict quietly trying to put his life back together, and Bill Duke's young militant Abdullah. The dynamic between those two characters gives the film much of its emotional weight. Schultz fought Universal executives to keep that storyline in the movie. He believed in it. And Dixon agreed to come back, one more time, to be in front of the camera. He played Lonnie with quiet authority. No theatrics, no sentimentality. Just the lived-in weight of a man who's been through things and is trying to carry them without collapsing. It wasn't quite his last acting role ever, but it was his return from retirement. And for a brief window, Ivan Dixon was performing again. Fact 11. Antonio Fargus was filming this while playing Huggy Bear on Starsky and Hutch. Antonio Fargus shows up in Car Wash as Lindy, a drag queen and worker, a character who could have been a cheap punchline in lesser hands. But Fargus played Lindy with dignity, wit, and absolute confidence. When confronted by Bill Duke's Abdullah about his lifestyle, Lindy delivers what is arguably the movie's most memorable single line. Sharp, unbothered, completely devastating. Fargus owned every second of it. Now here's what makes this extraordinary. While Fargus was on the Car Wash set, he was simultaneously appearing on one of the biggest television shows in America. Starsky and Hutch ran from 1975 to 1979. Fargus played Huggy Bear, the flashy street informant with the impeccable wardrobe and the inside line on every crime in the city. By 1976, he was already a blaxploitation legend. Shaft in 1971, Across 110th Street in 1972, Foxy Brown in 1974. Car Wash was just another layer on a career that was already legendary. And the legacy didn't stop with him. His son, Justin Fargus, played running back for the Oakland Raiders for 7 seasons. Talent runs in the family. Fact 12. Ice Cube used Car Wash as the blueprint for Friday. In 1995, Ice Cube released Friday, a day-in-the-life comedy, a predominantly black cast navigating one afternoon in south-central Los Angeles. No grand plot, no dramatic climax, just characters, relationships, humor, and a killer soundtrack. Sound familiar? When Ice Cube and DJ Pooh wrote the Friday screenplay, they reportedly used Car Wash as their structural template. And if you put the two films side by side, the architecture is nearly identical. One day, one location, an ensemble of distinct personalities, comedy rooted in community rather than conflict, music woven through the fabric of every scene. Car Wash proved the formula could carry a film. Friday perfected it for a new generation, and DJ Pooh didn't stop there. In 2001, he wrote and directed The Wash, starring Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. The setting? A Los Angeles car wash. The influence wasn't subtle. It wasn't even a reference. It was a full inheritance. Car Wash didn't just entertain audiences in 1976, it created a template that shaped hood comedy for decades. Ice Cube understood that. He took the foundation and built something new on top of it. But the original still holds. Fact 13. The movie was shot in just 22 days. 22 days. That's the entire production window for Car Wash. For context, the average Hollywood studio film in the 1970s ran somewhere between 50 and 80 shooting days. A major production could stretch to 6 months or more. 22 days was considered low budget even by low-budget standards. Director Michael Schultz didn't just make the most of those 22 days. He produced a film that would go on to play at Cannes, win a Grammy, and spawn a filmmaking lineage that stretched from 1976 to the present day. That timeline is borderline insane when you think about the logistics. A full ensemble cast, location shooting at a working car wash, constant noise issues, a 2-day Richard Pryor visit, ADR for the entire film. 22 days. Fact 14. The car wash was a real, functioning business during production. The Figueroa car wash wasn't a set. It wasn't a constructed replica. It was a real, operational car wash in Los Angeles, and it remained open for business during significant portions of the shoot. Real customers, real cars, real machinery running. On some days, the line of cars waiting to be washed served as unscripted background for what the cameras were capturing. That is either the most chaotic production environment imaginable or a stroke of genius that gave the film a texture no manufactured set could replicate. Probably both. Fact 15. Director Michael Schultz was one of the busiest black directors in Hollywood history. Michael Schultz wasn't a first-timer on Car Wash. By 1976, he had already directed Cooley High, which had come out the year before, and established him as one of the most significant voices in Black American cinema. The year Car Wash came out, Schultz was working on multiple projects simultaneously. He directed Car Wash and Which Way Is Up, both in 1976. The following year, he directed Greased Lightning, the Richard Pryor biopic about racing driver Wendell Scott. The year after that, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and The Wiz producer responsibilities. In a Hollywood that was offering black directors very few opportunities, Schultz forced the door open through sheer volume and consistency of quality. Car Wash was not an accident. It was the work of a precise, disciplined filmmaker operating at full capacity. Fact 16. Royce was essentially unknown before Car Wash. Norman Whitfield didn't just produce the Car Wash soundtrack, he used it to launch a band. Royce, originally called Total Concept Unlimited, was a funk and soul group that Whitfield had signed to his own Whitfield Records label. Before Car Wash, they were virtually unknown. They'd been working as backup musicians and were looking for a breakthrough. Car Wash gave them one. The title track went to number 1. I Want to Get Next to You, also from the soundtrack, hit number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. Wishing on a Star became a top 5 hit in the United Kingdom. Royce went on to have a substantial recording career, but their origin story is inseparable from a single soundtrack for a single car wash movie. The film launched them, and they helped define the film in return. Fact 17. The film featured a trans character treated with uncommon dignity for 1976. Lindy, played by Antonio Fargus, is a drag queen and worker working at the car wash. In 1976, that kind of character in a mainstream Hollywood film, even a low-budget one, almost always served as a punchline, comic relief at best, a cautionary figure at worst. Car Wash did something different. Lindy is funny, yes, but the humor comes from Lindy's intelligence and wit, not from mockery. When Abdullah challenges Lindy's choices, Lindy doesn't shrink. Lindy fires back with a line so sharp and so self-possessed that the scene belongs entirely to Fargus. For a film made in 1976, that's remarkable. The character was written and performed with a specificity and humanity that was genuinely ahead of its time. It didn't get much attention when the film came out, but looking back, it reads as one of the movie's most quietly radical choices. Fact 18. The ensemble cast included a future Grammy winner, a future Tony nominee, and multiple future directors. Car Wash was, in the most literal sense, a talent factory. The cast was loaded. Beyond Bill Duke and Ivan Dixon, the film featured Richard Brestoff, Franklin A.J., Tracy Reed, Michael Fennell, Clarence Muse, and George Carlin, who played a cab driver in one of the film's stranger inclusions. Several members of the ensemble went on to substantial careers in television, film, and music. The film functioned as a showcase at a moment when Hollywood was beginning, slowly, reluctantly, to recognize that black ensemble casts could anchor commercial films. Car Wash didn't just prove the audience existed, it proved the talent existed. Fact 19. George Carlin was in this movie. Yes, that George Carlin, one of the most celebrated stand-up comedians in American history, the man who would later be recognized with a Kennedy Center Mark Twain Prize for American humor, showed up in Car Wash as a cab driver named the Taxi Driver. He had scenes. He had lines. It wasn't a cameo in the modern sense. It was a full character appearance. And it is bizarre and delightful in equal measure. Fact 20. The film was rated PG, despite its adult themes. Car Wash deals with drug use, prostitution, radical politics, police tension, race relations, and sexuality. It contains language that in any other context would trigger an R rating without debate. It was rated PG. This was 1976. The PG-13 rating didn't exist yet. That wouldn't arrive until 1984, created partially in response to films like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. In 1976, PG covered an enormous range, and Car Wash landed squarely in it, which meant teenagers could see it without parental accompaniment, which meant the audience it was made for, young, black, urban, working class, could walk into the theater and watch themselves on screen without a gatekeeper standing in the way. That PG rating was, in its own small way, a victory. Fact 21. Universal Pictures initially had low expectations for the film. Universal financed Car Wash. They also, by most accounts, didn't expect it to amount to much. The studio's pitch to Ned Tannen was essentially this: skip the Broadway show, make the movie cheaply, see what happens. Low risk, low expectation. A filler release. What they got instead was a film that cracked the top 10 at the box office, generated one of the year's biggest soundtracks, played at Cannes, and launched careers that are still unfolding today. Hollywood has a long history of not knowing what it has until it's already happened. Car Wash is one of the cleaner examples. Fact 22. The title song was used in the film, before the film was even finished. Because the soundtrack was recorded before filming, and because Schultz played it on set during production, there's a fascinating paradox at the center of Car Wash's creation. Actors performed to music that was made for their film, before their film existed. The song responded to the movie before the movie responded to the song. The creative process wasn't linear, it was circular. The Car Wash song was essentially living inside the production of Car Wash, before either one was complete. That is either deeply philosophical or completely chaotic. Possibly, it's the same thing. Fact 23. The movie has no traditional villain. Think about how many films, comedies especially, rely on a clear antagonist. The bad boss, the crooked cop, the system standing in the way. There's a tradition of identifying the obstacle and watching the heroes overcome it. Car Wash has no villain. There's tension, there's conflict, there's frustration and ambition and disappointment and desire, but there's no one to defeat. The movie is, fundamentally, about people existing together, bumping against each other, making each other laugh, making each other angry, and getting through the day. That structure is deceptively difficult to pull off. Without a villain to organize the plot, you need characters strong enough to carry it on their own. Car Wash had exactly that. Fact 24. The film was ahead of the docuseries format by decades. Car Wash is structured like an episodic documentary. You dip in and out of different characters' stories. Nobody arc fully resolves. The day ends, and most things are exactly as they were when it started. In 2024, we call that a docuseries, or an anthology, or a vignette-driven narrative. We have entire streaming platforms built on exactly this kind of storytelling. In 1976, Car Wash was doing it with 35mm film and a fried chicken bag. Fact 25. Several scenes were improvised by the cast. With an ensemble this large and this talented, Michael Schultz wisely created space for the cast to breathe. Several scenes in the finished film contain improvised dialogue and moments that weren't in Schumacher's original screenplay. The result is a looseness, a naturalism, that makes the whole thing feel lived in, rather than performed. When the characters at the Car Wash feel like people you've met, it's partly because some of what they're saying came directly out of their own instincts rather than a page. That's a directorial choice. Schultz trusted his cast enough to get out of their way. Fact 26. The movie was successful enough to inspire a sequel that Richard Pryor refused. The commercial and cultural success of Car Wash was significant enough that Universal began developing a sequel. Richard Pryor was approached. He declined. He was already frustrated by how his billing had been used to market the original, and he had no interest in returning to a project where he felt his presence was being exploited rather than featured. The sequel never materialized. Car Wash remains a singular film. No franchise, no sequel, no reboot, just the original, sitting exactly where it landed in 1976. That's rarer than you think in Hollywood. Fact 27. The film's influence on hip-hop goes beyond Friday. The direct line from Car Wash to Friday has been documented, but the influence on hip-hop culture more broadly, the aesthetic of a day in the community, the ensemble of characters who feel like types but reveal themselves as people, the insistence that Black working-class life is worthy of narrative attention, runs much deeper. You hear it in how rappers tell stories, in the characters that populate rap videos and concept albums, in the insistence that the block, the neighborhood, the car wash, the barbershop, the corner store, all of these are stages worth standing on. Car Wash told Black America in 1976 that a minimum wage job site was worth a Cannes screening, that a disco comedy about people washing cars deserved a Grammy, that the smallest stories can leave the biggest marks. Hip-hop didn't forget that lesson. It built a culture on it. Fact 28. Danny DeVito was cut from the theatrical release, but restored for TV. We saved this one for last because it is, in many ways, the most surreal detail of all. Danny DeVito is in Car Wash. So is Brooke Adams. They played Joe and Terry, the owners of a food stand called Big Joe's Doghouse located right next to the car wash. They had speaking roles, full scenes, actual storylines. Almost none of it made the theatrical cut. Nearly all of their footage was deleted before the film went into wide release. If you watch the movie today, you'll glimpse them briefly in the background. Blink, and you'll miss them. The scenes they filmed, the lines they delivered, the characters they built, gone from the version that played in theaters. But here's the twist. When the film was edited for television broadcast, the same process that created the clean audio track replacing the N-word, the deleted DeVito and Adams footage was restored. The TV version includes scenes that theatrical audiences never saw. Danny DeVito, one of the most distinctive character actors of the past 50 years, Taxi, Batman Returns, It's Always Sunny, The War of the Roses, reduced to a background extra in the theatrical release of a 1976 disco comedy, and the only way to see the real version of his performance is to track down the television edit. Hollywood is ruthless. And sometimes its mistakes are more interesting than its intentions. Car Wash was not supposed to be a classic. It was a low-budget ensemble comedy about working-class people in Los Angeles getting through a single day. No superheroes, no franchise, no three-act resolution, just funk, laughs, and an enormous amount of soul. But those 22 shooting days produced something that played at Cannes, won a Grammy, inspired Ice Cube, launched Bill Duke, brought Ivan Dixon out of retirement, gave Royce a career, and created a template for black ensemble filmmaking that we're still living inside of today. So here's the question we want to leave you with, and we want you to answer it in the comments. Which fact hit you hardest? Was it Richard Pryor, so high he couldn't remember making the movie? Was it Joel Schumacher going from funky ensemble comedies to rubber batsuits? Was it Norman Whitfield and the fried chicken bag? Or was it Danny DeVito, cut from the whole thing, quietly existing somewhere in the TV edit like a ghost? Tell us below. And if this breakdown hit different, if you learned something you genuinely didn't know, hit subscribe, because we do this for every film that Hollywood tried to make you forget. Car Wash pulled up, laid down a beat, and reminded the industry that soul never goes out of style.